I'm not a wellness professional, I'm a university professional. I've spent most of my working life in the HE sector. My first job was in 1992 and I'm now on my 6 different institutions. So I've got a 30-year longitudinal perspective on universities and students, and over that time I've observed the growth of what is now the sort of student-specific branch of the wellness industry. If you were in a room with 10 vice-chancellors and you asked them for their 3 top worries, most of them would have student mental health as one of their top 3, and I can assure you that 20 years ago that was not the case. This is a big, big worry for vice-chancellors, university executives and the boards of governors, of course. I found it quite difficult to kind of draw a line under this piece because it's such a hot topic, mental health in universities. Every day I was reading or seeing something new that I could talk about. And when I left my workplace on Friday, I walked past the faculty student advice point. It's like a drop-in centre, and there was a big screen saying in capital letters, "Concerned about your mental health?" And I thought, oh, right, okay, right. So I've mentioned that, but just every day I see something new. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that adults regarding the younger generation as worryingly substandard in some way certainly isn't a new phenomenon. The Greek poet Hesiod in the 8th century BC lamented, "I see no hope for the future of our people if we're dependent on the frivolous youth of today, for certainly all youth are reckless beyond words." What seems to me different about contemporary concerns about the young is that we're concerned that they aren't reckless and bold enough, but overly timid and anxious. When I first started working closely with undergraduates at a Russell Group University in the mid-90s, I was preparing them to study abroad in their 3rd year, which is a very anxiety-provoking prospect, actually. They were very much like me and my fellow students from a decade earlier. I'm sure some of them did have crises of confidence and long dark nights of the soul, like we did, but the overwhelming majority of them would have been mortified if anyone, particularly any of the adults, had noticed. They were very keen to be brave and to appear to be brave. Every year I would work with a group of between 250 and 300 students, and in 2000 I noticed a very definite change, not so much in the students, but in the parents. Prior to 2000, I would hear from maybe 1 or 2 mothers or fathers about a student who was going abroad. And in 2000, I heard from between 5 and 10 parents. And those who contacted me were very, very worried about their student children going on a semester or a year abroad. And you will, of course, realise that these students were millennials, the generation who reached maturity at the turn of the millennium. The baby on board generation who was safely confined to car seats and not turned loose in the back of the family car. And my point is that our societal concern about the safety and the psychological safety of young people in general, and students in particular, isn't a trend that came from nowhere in the last few years, and it's been growing for at least a quarter of a century. And of course, there are aspects of being a university student. Who here went to university? Yeah, you know this. It's hard on anyone's mind and spirit, just as being at school is hard on most of us. Most undergraduates are actually still adolescents, with all that entails. Strong and irrational emotions, intense tribal loyalty, and an overwhelming desire to fit in and be accepted by your peers. Some experts in the field are now, at last, saying that in the rush to destigmatise talking about mental health, we've proved that a little learning is a dangerous thing by giving young people on the brink of adulthood, but not there yet, the idea that their perfectly normal adolescent emotions and experiences could be symptomatic of poor mental health. Most students at UK universities are the product of schools which are obliged to concern themselves with Ofsted metrics, including pupil wellbeing. And so these students are not only fluent in the language of mental health, but primed to notice and diagnose symptoms of poor mental health in themselves and their peers. The phenomenon that epitomises the vulnerability of students to their own lack of wellness, at least in the unforgiving eye of the media, is the suicide of a student. The university sector loves league tables, but this is a league table nobody wants to be in. Unfortunately for the University of Bristol, a cluster of 11 student deaths by suicide between 2016 and 2018, created the impression that students are uniquely vulnerable and that university campuses in general, and Bristol in particular, are psychologically dangerous places. Statistics relating to suicide are difficult to interpret, partly because it is, thank goodness, a rare event, and it should be comforting to universities to reflect that the available information suggests that students are actually less likely to take their own lives than their non-student peers. But universities are acutely concerned about their students' mental well-being. A student who takes his or her own life attracts far more attention than the untimely death of a NEET, not in education, employment or training. Is it fair to say that the media are particularly interested if the university is one like Bristol, where the offspring of the professional middle classes and the Chatterati are disproportionately represented? In October 2022, a group of bereaved parents set up a petition on the UK government website calling for the introduction of a legal duty of care for students in higher education. The petition received more than 128,000 signatures and was debated. Universities the Minister for Health, for HE, didn't support the proposal, but he introduced a package of measures to be put into place by a higher education mental health implementation task force, which has subsequently been outsourced to a group called Student Minds. And I just want to finish up by saying that you would think that the government and universities would have realised by now that outsourcing institutional policy making to lobby groups with an ideological agenda is probably a bad idea. Right, that's me.
Okay, thank you.